Welcome back to the finale of What If Watto Accepted Republic Credits. If you haven't seen the first part, which was made ages ago, the link to that and my Discord server will be in the description below. To summarise, Watto's acceptance of the credits meant Anakin was not brought to Coruscant and Maul had gone missing. This results in Sidious keeping Plagueis alive until he can find a suitable apprentice, and he is the one who fights in place of Maul against Qui-Gon and Dooku. The Jedi manage to survive and decide to leave the Order, with Obi-Wan following them out, but to the dark side and Plagueis. Together they manage to defeat Sidious and leave the Jedi scrambling with several holocrons missing and the Sith on the loose. The return of war to the Jedi was welcomed by one individual who had just left the world of Tatooine. The Zabrak Maul was now flying in a Sith infiltrator, having ignored his master's orders to kill Padme Amidala, and was now carrying the precious cargo of Anakin Skywalker. After the Jedi had repaired their ship and left the world, Maul had left his perch on top of a sand dune and used his blood fin to accelerate to Mos Espa. The Sith didn't need his eyes to spot the Toydarian Watto's workshop, such was the powerful aura generated by the young slave Anakin Skywalker. Whilst Darth Sidious had taught him some diplomacy skills, Maul didn't know how to approach the young Skywalker and reverted to his best skill of violence. Using the Force to slam Watto into the shop's counter, Maul then pushed Anakin into a wall to knock him out and casually threw him over his shoulder. Deactivating Anakin's slave tracker with a wand on Watto's belt, Maul moved out of the shop at Mos Espa to hyperspace where he was now, as he continued his course to his old home of Dathomir. Maul knew that Talzin hated Sidious for taking him away, and when the Zabrak descended through the red mist, Talzin was waiting with her nightsisters, having seen visions of his return through a crystal ball. The young Force sensitive carried by Maul was awoken by Talzin, and Anakin looked excited and terrified at being on the new planet. Whilst Talzin had rarely performed rituals on humans, the power and potential of Anakin could not fall to the Sith, and she gathered her fellow nightsisters for a ritual similar to a baptism. Anakin is lifted into the air by the nightsisters, then immersed in the water beneath the nightsister lair, and finally covered in Dathomir's magical ichor, sealing his allegiance to Talzin and the nightsisters. As Anakin started to learn from Maul, Qui-Gon and Dooku were located in Dooku's castle in Serenno, planning for a way to get rid of the Sith without the Jedi. The former Jedi Masters tried to get into contact with Jedi Master Sifo-Dyas, who Dooku knew had been working with the Kaminoans, but having lost his trail, they decided to travel to Felucia to find out more. When they arrived to the jungle world, the former Jedi sensed darkness in the jungles, and amongst the nice-selling crops, Qui-Gon in particular shocked to see Obi-Wan Kenobi. His former Padawan looked back to the Jedi with a cold darkness, and the Jedi knew that Obi-Wan was just there to delay them from finding the truth of Sifo-Dyas. As the native Felucians dangled from the jungle, Obi-Wan used the Force to pull several drooping pods into the Jedi before running back to an old path. Dooku and Qui-Gon were unmoved, sensing the growing unrest amongst the Felucians, and conclude Obi-Wan had obviously laid traps, so look around for the Felucian leaders who were in allegiance with the Republic. When the Felucian elders see the lightsabers, they immediately know the duo were searching for Sifo-Dyas and guide them to the sacred Sarlacc pit known as the Ancient Abyss. At the edge of the Sarlacc pit, Sifo-Dyas was calmly meditating in anticipation of an attack, but at the sight of the former Jedi, he stood up and ordered them to leave before Obi-Wan arrived. The former Jedi can hear the Trade Federation ships overhead, and combined with the distant demonic cries of Obi-Wan, they leave Felucia with the vital Sifo-Dyas. The Jedi Master had indeed been working with the Kaminoans, as he foresaw a great war, but since his time on Felucia, his vision had changed to a different threat. After completing negotiations with the Pikes on Obadiah, Sifo-Dyas guided Dooku and Qui-Gon to Kamino, where the Kaminoans had begun to construct a cloning facility to his needs. Sifo-Dyas had secretly organised a deal with the Intergalactic Banking Clan, but the presence of the former Jedi had modified his plans, and now Dooku would be the subject of the clones. Whilst cloning a Force sensitive would be more expensive, an army of the formidable Jedi duelist would easily dismantle any Trade Federation or Jedi army. With Obi-Wan showing the threat of the Sith on Felucia, Sifo-Dyas needed to accelerate the growth of the clones, and turn to an ancient cloning technology developed by the Comite species. The Sparty Creations factory on the world of Kartal had secretly been making clone cylinders that use flash pumping, which involved using simulations to transfer knowledge to the cerebral cortex of the clone. and the former Jedi combined this with the lizard-like creature known as the Ysalamiri to ensure the clones were stabilised. The clones would be ready in around 20 standard days, and the sudden threat was felt by both the Sith, but it was Grandmaster Yoda that was most shaken. Recent events had left the Jedi doubting his leadership, and now the peacekeepers of the past millennia would be fighting as warriors, so he gathered the Jedi Council to meditate together. The dark side was clouding their vision, but they foresaw a mighty battle on a number of frontiers, and one that the Jedi would fail to win. Yoda always believed the future was in motion, so after taking some time to meditate alone, he found the force presence of his old Padawan drawing towards him. The Grand Master decided to secretly leave the temple, then travel to Dooku's homeworld of Serenno to try and establish an alliance, and was not surprised to find his old Padawan waiting for his arrival. Dooku respectfully bowed to Yoda, and as they walked past the pillars to the entrance of his castle, Dooku asked Yoda if the Jedi had realised their errors. As Yoda gently tapped his cane onto the floor, his thoughts were interrupted by a subtle gust above him in the Force, and the Grand Master could sense danger amongst the trees that lined the exterior of the castle. Yoda and Dooku remained patient, and silently meditated facing away from each other, until they hear a supernatural roar, then ignited their lightsabers. The Night Brother Maul was completely immersed in Nightsister magic, and flew through the air to attack the Great Masters, and screams from around them told the Jedi they were being ambushed. Even though the air became a smog of green mist, Yoda and Dooku did not need their eyes to see, and they started removing the castle pillars to throw into the Nightsisters. The Nightsisters retaliated by throwing wide-ranging potions and firing darts and energized arrows, but the Jedi combined the ability of breath control and their lightsabers to go to their ships. But as they are about to escape, the entire castle and its surroundings are trapped, as a green bubble emitted from the tallest cliff, and it was Mother Talzin. The leader of the Nightsisters had seen the death of Darth Sidious, and knew the galaxy would be vulnerable, so had chosen to strike at two of the most powerful beings. As Yoda and Dooku tried to trap Talzin from opposing sides, Yoda saw a horrific sight beside Talzin as she was siphoning the Force energy of Anakin Skywalker. Yoda force-pulled Anakin away from Talzin's ritual, leaving Dooku to deactivate the bubble by fighting Talzin, and the energy sword clashed with the curved-hilted lightsaber. Talzin was outmatched by Dooku's skill, but used her magic to teleport across the area, so Dooku decided to draw into his castle. As Yoda carried Anakin in one hand, and deflected the attacks of the Nightsisters with the other on the way to his starfighter, Dooku used his guard droids to delay Talzin as he made his way to his throne room. The former Jedi asked for Sifo-Dyas and Qui-Gon to alert the Jedi and the Kaminoans of the battle before waiting for the Nightsister. Talzin thought Dooku looked vulnerable, with nowhere to run, and teleported in front of him, only to find that he opened the lift beneath him, sending her falling over 100 meters to a painful death. Talzin's death turned the screams of the sisters into silence, as they weakened without her magic, and the spell within Anakin was lifted. The attack and near defeat from the Nightsisters made Yoda realise that his leadership of the Jedi was flawed, and he would need to ally with Dooku. Yoda agrees that together they can neutralise the Sith, but just as he is about to enter his ship, he nearly falls to the floor in shock at the great pain he felt through the Force. Yoda activates the small holoprojector in his ship, and together with Dooku, they see Mace Windu deflecting attacks from battle droids, and through a stuttering signal, he reported that Coruscant was under attack from the Sith and the Trade Federation. As Yoda travelled back to the Jedi, Dooku was on his way back to Kamino, where his clones had just been produced, and when he eventually landed, he inspected the now armoured clones of himself being transported in consular-class cruisers. Dooku could feel the power of the clones, but also a great darkness within the Force, as he joined Sifo-Dyas and Qui-Gon on the way to Coruscant. The three former Jedi had the new clones, and carved through the Trade Federation's blockade that had obstructed all the hyperlanes and trade routes to Coruscant, but the smooth road for the former Jedi would end when they saw Coruscant, with the Sith surrounding the entire planet, using giant cruisers and destroyers. The small landing craft used by Dooku is repeatedly struck by the turbo lasers from the battleships before sustaining permanent damage, and as the ship falls towards one of their own cruisers, the former Jedi used the Force to divert the trajectory of the ship into one of the Trade Federation's battleships. Even with the combined might of the three former Jedi Masters, their falling ship doesn't go where they wanted and crash straight into the bridge instead. Dooku, Qui-Gon and Sifo-Dyas cough through the smoke and place breathing masks as they see the droids flying out of the airlocks. The pressure from the outside is too much for them to leave the ship, so Dooku uses the Force to move the battleship's controls, directing them down to Coruscant. The blazing inferno shot through the world's atmosphere, and with the skyline rapidly closing in, the 3 former Jedi leapt out, landing on the closest building, which happened to be the 500 Republica. The once silent region in and around the Jedi Temple was now filled with chaotic screams of civilians, and a field of smoke and death, but the 3 exiles would not let the Sith walk over the Jedi. With the main battleship destroyed, the clones fly through the hole in the aerial blockade, and Dooku then orders for the landing craft to surround the perimeter of the smoke. The clones all ignited their lightsabers and changed the tide of the battle, demolishing all droids in their path, but the former Jedi find this too easy, so jumped on a landing craft and entered the battle themselves. The presence of the clones stopped Plagueis and Obi-Wan for a moment, but the Sith Lord didn't look fazed, and staring directly at the Jedi, he executed Contingency Order 66. Everyone other than the Sith froze into a stunned silence as the clones all swiveled towards the Jedi, but no one was more surprised than Dooku and Sifo-Dyas, who now realised Plagueis funded the entire project. Almost every Jedi Master and Council member was killed on the spot, unable to resist the army of Dooku's, other than Yoda, who had run to the Jedi Temple's hangar with Anakin. Qui-Gon, Sifo-Dyas and Dooku were consumed by what they thought was their creation, leaving the 2 Sith of Plagueis and Obi-Wan. The Sith had taken over the Republic's home of Coruscant, and now they would have their own golden era. On the world of Dagobah, Yoda and Anakin were the last hope for the Jedi, but with no outside help, they would be forced to take a similar path to Darth Bane, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the Sith to end. That is it for What If Watto Accepted the Republic Credits. If you want to see more What Ifs in the future, feel free to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and check out my Discord server and Twitter. And leave a comment on what if you'd like to see next, and how I can improve my videos. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.